Greetings, everyone. Again, I'm Lynn Gilliland, and so grateful to be here with Shelley Goode, who is with Oxfam, Oxfam America. I will let her talk about what the work is that she's doing and where she's coming from to join us. We had a pre-conversation before we had this one, and I felt so grateful that she was referred to me as someone that we could capture her lessons, because there was just some of the nuggets that she was giving me in the pre-interview that I hope that we get to today. Shelley has a very rich, diverse background, somewhat unusual for the international non-governmental world. So we're grateful to have you here, Shelley. And I was wondering if you could just start by telling us about your background.
Well, thank you, Lynn, for that introduction. I am a fundraiser. I've been a fundraiser for many years, since I had my first internship in college, where I interned with the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra. And over the years, I've remained a fundraiser, but I have traveled in different nonprofit environments. So I've worked at the Smithsonian Institution. I've opened a children's museum in Baltimore. I was lucky enough to work at Spelman College, and I worked at Volunteers of America, which is a large health and human service organization over 100 years old. And now I'm at Oxfam America, in charge of raising money for Oxfam America. And Oxfam is part of a global confederation working to end the injustice of poverty.
And was that a big transition for you to go from those other types of nonprofits to Oxfam? Did it feel like a big shift, or?
Because I've been in different spaces, it didn't feel like a huge shift. There is a different element. The international element is certainly different. And, but I have had to carry my experiences gained in different organizations to the organizations where I would land. And so I found that transition felt organic, but the international sight lines provided a new learning opportunity for me.
Mm-hmm. And when we talked before, you were talking about taking risks. You were talking about first going to Spelman and then taking the risk to go live in Atlanta. And at least the way I remember it is you framed your life as one of taking risks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I've been lucky enough to have had the opportunity to take risk, and I think also have been felt empowered enough to take those risks. And when I think of going to Spelman, I had a home in Baltimore, but I was contacted by the college, and I was working at Syracuse, at the Syracuse Symphony at the time, but I met Dr. Janetta Cole in New York. And if for anyone who doesn't know her, I would suggest looking her up. She is a phenomenal shiro, as she would call herself. And I remember coming back saying, I need to work there. And it was also something that I felt like I could bring the experience that I gained in other institutions when I worked at Hopkins, and to take that experience to an historically Black college. And so that was something that was very meaningful to me, and to have that experience and to work with them in their first big capital campaign.
And so what of all those experiences do you bring to Oxfam that maybe a traditional non-governmental wouldn't know, or what's the fresh breeze that you bring in?
You know, when you've worked in different nonprofit environments, you have to learn to pivot very quickly. And you also understand that no matter how established an organization is, they can be have a startup feel. And I always enter into those spaces because I've been in startups and even in established organizations. I just assume that there is a startup element to the change you need to bring to the table. And so I think that my experience, that's what I bring to Oxfam, is understanding that you have to be willing to be a little disruptive while honoring the past, and also understanding that change is really the engine for the future, and how to encourage people to feel trusting enough that they too can be a part of that change. And so that's what I think I've brought to Oxfam, kind of bringing your outside lens, looking from the outside in, and a fresher perspective.
So I want to know the secret of how you be a little disruptive and honor the past.
It's a great question.
Yeah, because that, I would love to learn that myself.
Mm-hmm. After some mistakes, I have to say that I've learned that you need to help people understand that you're not saying that what took place in the past is wrong, and that you are celebrating how their successes in getting an organization to where it is at the moment. But then you start asking a question, and I use this image of, there's a favorite image I use. It's a road, and there's a question mark at the end of the road. And I posed the question, what if? And that what if can be many things. So what if we try something different? What if you ask yourself, is there something else that you would have liked to have done differently in the past that could have improved performance? What if we try something a little differently? So asking the question pulls people into the process as opposed to dictating what should happen. And I find that that opportunity of co-creation is a way of both honoring building, because people feel like you're building on the past, but then you're also creating another jumping off point for them and for the organization to try new things and to move forward.
And I like the what if. You're not saying this is not working or this is wrong, or you're just saying, here's the road. What if we did this? What if we looked at it this way? What if we looked at it that way? There's no judgment there.
Yes, there's no judgment. Yeah, and you understand too, and I use this image, and we had a retreat a couple weeks ago, that the road is divided in two. Some people are walking straight down the middle on the straight lines. Other people are zigzagging across the lines. There's some people standing on the grassy sides of the road. But eventually, if you're still moving towards that question mark, it's okay how you can get there in different ways, but then you have to feel like you are part of a collective moving in the same way, but you don't have to moving in the same direction, but not in the same way.
I'm going to ask you something that we didn't talk about. It's in my mind. So it might feel like a left turn, Shelley. I'm sorry. What do you think about scaling leadership? Like if you wanted to scale your people that report to you, let's just start there. How do you scale people's leadership abilities or growth? Because if they don't scale, you're not going to be able to get to the what if, the vision down the road.
That's a great question. I try to look at the talents of the people in front of me, and And I also understand that it is my role to create an environment where people feel like they can both succeed and that they have the opportunity to fail.
Mm.
And if there is that understanding of trust, that is the way you start to scale and unleash leadership. And I also I think I create an environment where people understand that they can own streams of work, and it has nothing to do with title. Titles are not, we are not rigidly bound by title. We are looking at the way work should be done, ways of working. And with that, you're creating a team environment. And in that teaming environment, it's less hierarchical. And that is a way you really pull people together, and you are helping people to lead from where they sit. And I find that that is both a way of empowering people, but also provides a demonstration for others in the organization to give an example of how you can be working, particularly with a younger cohort, so that they feel like they are in these leadership positions. They are not bound by an artificial title, or they're not siloed, that you really are. The way to unleash talent is to create a teaming environment that is both authentic and where everyone is holding each other accountable for the success of the group.
And that's definitely what the literature says, and my own experience. It seems hard to get there, to have a team hold itself accountable. Mm-hmm. And to the way you're describing it, it feels like the roles are unclear, like not, people really want, this is my role and that's your role. And that sounds like that's not as defined. So somehow, if I'm understanding it, somehow it works without having people in their boxes.
Yeah, and there's a design element here as well. So if I could use an example, we combined our major gift team and our mid-level teams. And with that proposition, I came to the group with an initial design saying, I think that it could look like this: 2 teams with people on teams reporting to a team leader in their teaming spaces, but they could have an HR reporting line to others. But I said, I'm going to step away. You may come up with a different construct. Mm. And with that, and with facilitation, they did come up with a different construct. And, with me coming in to be consulted, but they designed this team. And they created norms for how meetings should be run. They created the team goals. They created refreshed and created work streams connected to how they needed to work together to be fully integrated. And so that was not my design, but it was one that I could support. And I was the one, where they would come back and say, well, this is where we are now. And I think that there is actually more clarity in this teaming structure that's led by a young woman who has tremendous potential. But it's also unleashed and unlocked others to take ownership. I mean, I've just watched this group take on things that you never would have imagined. And so there's more clarity than you would presume would be when you're thinking of a teaming structure where it may be self-directed.
But what you did is you gave them the container, and they went, and then they were free to within that, and all the structures help, the norms, coming up with the norms, their goals. And then I'm assuming then that helps with holding each other accountable, since they did it, since they created it.
Yes.
since they have that ownership over it.
Yes, they hold themselves accountable. There are team goals, and then in individual goals, those team goals are reflected in their individual goals. So it was a lot of hard work to get the structure in place, and then to really perfect the new way of working, but it has really reaped tremendous benefits, not only for our team, but for the organization in demonstrating the way that the organization needs to move when we think about the workforce of the future and our own future connected to our strategic plan.
I would love to delve into that more and use that as a model elsewhere. And I wanted to circle back to, you talked about failure, one of my favorite subjects, not because I like failing or at all, but there's so much richness, it seems to me, in failure. And when I ask leaders about their experience of failure and how they think about failure, that's been some of the gems I think that everyone can learn from. So what did you think about failure?
Um, when I was younger, I was offended by failure.
Mm.
And it was something that I just found unacceptable. And I didn't think that you should fail. And as I've continued to my own path, I learned that failure is both an opportunity to grow and learn. And that part of the journey, the learning, the constant learning is something that that's part of the fuel that keeps you going. And so if you look at failure as both an opportunity to reflect, it's humbling, but it is also, can be, depending on how you accept it, energizing, because you take that learning and then you are more effective based on the learnings you've gathered. And I think that with failure comes that thread of lifelong learning. And if you are energized by those opportunities, I mean, I just think about coming to work every day, and you don't know everything, and you're learning from those around you, and then but you are also teaching. And so that dynamic is something that when I think of failure now, I just see it as both challenge and opportunity.
Is there any story of a failure you could share with us that would help us understand how a learning that you had from that, how failure can be a teacher too?
Oh boy. I remember sending in a report, and I won't identify the institution, and this was the funder. And this person sat me down and said, I want you to know that the quality of this report is really not what it should have been. And it was both an illuminating moment for me, because it's something that I both had to absorb, but I also knew I had to take that back to team members in the organization, because it signaled that there was a different expectation. And so I, considered the quality of that product my failure, but then I also used the opportunity to speak the truth. You have to be authentic, and share that voice, channel that person's voice to the team to say that this is where we need to be. And so it was a humbling moment, but then it became a galvanizing opportunity as well.
And so the tension is always, how much failure is okay? Is, you
Mm.
know, there's fail fast, there's let your people fail and make mistakes so they learn. Is there a tipping point? Is it a personal thing, like how much I can tolerate in my own self before it becomes too scary?
You always have to balance what your own tolerance is and then what will be nurturing and constructive for your team.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some people who are uncomfortable in the space, uh, particularly if they think they're there alone. But if you have a group that trusts that they're in it together, I think that you take a step back, because then it's not about you, but it's about creating an environment where people feel like they have the opportunity to stretch. And you don't stretch if you don't feel like you can both soar and make a mistake, because
Mm.
you have to have that opportunity. And I think I've read a quote from you and I from one of my team members, and if I can find it, because it really I think touches on this subject. We were had a luncheon where we were talking about a recent accomplishment, and I said that I had to trust the team. It's a big team, the 50 people. There's too many things that you have to do, and I'm not intimately involved in everything. You create ways of working. You have to trust those around you, and they have to trust you as well. And this was the note that I received. I really appreciated what you said about having trust in your team to get the job done. As a member of that team, I can't overstate how much that view has helped me grow as an employee, and how feeling that trust, even when it sometimes leads to mistakes, has let me take risks that have enhanced my skill set and connection to our work. With no chance to fail, it's hard to feel success. And I think that captures it. If you don't feel like you can fail, you can't feel like you're going to be successful.
I love that. And I think that it grows your muscle in recovering, in taking bigger risks. It's a muscle builder.
Mm-hmm. It is, it is a muscle builder, because when you think of, again, when I think of the workforce, there's some who've had perfect grades, they come out of school, they expect that same trajectory. And you know what? You may hit a bump. You're in a work environment where you may not get an A on everything, and that's okay. And that's not the end of the world. In fact, people want to understand failure so that they can move past them and get better. And so that is, but some people don't believe that. You have to build an environment where people start to trust that that's part of the ethos of the organization, and there's no penalty. And going back to your earlier question, how much is too much? If it's failure because you've not done the best, or you didn't do your research, or you're not using data, that's not acceptable. But if you are taking a risk to try something new, you've put all of the right elements in place, and you took the risk and took that jump, that's okay. But failure doesn't mean sloppiness. It doesn't mean that you're lazy.
It means you did the best you could. You did all your background, all your work and it didn't fly. But that's good. That's very helpful, actually, because that's the thing I've been wondering about. It's failure when you were at your best. So you were doing your best, and your idea didn't work, or the
Mm-hmm.
thing failed.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And so when you're still a very young woman, but when you look back on your trajectory so far, what do you know now that you wish you knew then? Or if this resonates with you more, what advice would you give your younger self?
Um, I wish so the advice I would give my younger self, let me start over, is that you always need to be authentic
Mm.
to your true self. You have to trust your gut. You have to understand who you are before you are placed in situations. So understand the essence of who you are as a person, and you carry that through. And then be confident in the knowledge of who you are, and that is enough to take you into different situations. And so that was something I think I would want that light bulb to go off sooner. I think you may be walking that path without understanding that those are the elements kind of propelling you forward. And I think that grounding would have made uh, just given you even more gravitas.
What do you think if you'd been the younger self and you'd known, I got this, I'm good at this, what would have anything been different for you or just less stress?
I think less stress and less questioning of yourself, that imposter syndrome,
Yeah.
should you, because sometimes there are opportunities that come to you or came to me, and you would think, I, gosh, I don't know how this opportunity came to me, or not realizing that it's based on who you are, and it just, no one gave you something, you've earned everything. So understanding the distinction between being given opportunities, but that with that you have earned opportunities, and so that clarity I think would have been helpful.
And have you been in your career, your life, been asked, been given opportunities you didn't feel you were ready for, that were like, you're like, well, I don't know why they're offering this to me. I'm not ready.
um, that's another great question. I think I had asked. No, I think what I would say is sometimes I would say, well, I'm surprised
Right.
that that opportunity was given to me, and and that may have been where I stopped because I wasn't brave enough to go past that. So that, I would say I'm surprised that I have that, but then I would tell myself, well, I'm going to make the most of being here. So that surprise, I think, carries with it some humility, and
Mhm.
but then you think, well, okay, I'm here, and then there are times when you think, and I'm supposed to be here.
Mm. I love that I'm supposed to be here. So, I'm making up, I assume you said yes. They came to you, you thought, your first thought was, what? That
Yeah.
you said yes. So that takes some courage,
Mm-hmm.
some trust that you'll have what it takes, some believing in the other people that they must see something that you were missing, right?
Yes.
Or you hadn't seen. I think so. I'm thinking specifically about women right now, and I know it's not unusual for men also, but I know that an issue, a habit that women that we have is we think we have more to learn, more to go. We're not ready yet. We haven't got enough information, and there's something here that I want to pull out about. You were mentioning about maybe it's even knowing that you're probably smarter, more creative, more competent than you give yourself credit for. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know, there's something there, or yeah, I'm not sure where I'm seeing, but there's some wish that I have. that we would all just know we think we're here, but we're
Yes.
actually out there. So just know that you're wrong.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. That's right. The trust that someone may see something in you that you don't see in yourself.
Yes.
And then you have to decide whether you're going to believe that and use that, or you can just be in denial and push that image, that reflection, or shut down that reflection they have of you. And it's a constant balancing act, because there are people, and I know I've been in the position of sharing what I see in people as I've worked with them, and I've also been on the receiving end, sometimes believing and sometimes not quite believing what people have said they've seen in me.
I like that a lot. And it seems like a gift we can keep giving to each other, right?
Yes,
Pointing out those
constantly.
things.
Yes.
Are there things that you wish that young women knew now that you like, any 3 things you wish young women could take on board that would help them, that are women that are up and coming leaders?
Uh, one of the things that I wish they knew is, and this is something I've learned over the years, is that your strength can be coupled with kindness.
Hmm.
That you can be hard charging, but you can, that coupled with that is your kindness and empathy, and because that makes you a welcoming person, and it also creates that aura around you that helps people to, again, trust who you are. And so I believe in treating people the way that they're supposed to be treated. I've been treated well throughout my career, and I try to reflect that, and try to channel those who were mentors to me. And I think I told you the story when I was coming out of school and I was writing letters on a electric typewriter, to really date myself. And there was a man who was vice president at Hopkins, Rip Haley, who he answered my letter, and I was shocked. And then I had an appointment, so it worked. All the things that they tell you should work, and I sat down, and he said, I don't have anything now, but at that point Peabody had just affiliated with Hopkins, the Peabody Conservatory, and he said there will be a position there. And I've never forgotten that, as someone coming out of school, being given that opportunity. And when people reach out to you and reach out to me, I continue to respond, remembering how people responded to me. And that is something you want your younger self to also know, that you are in a position, no matter how junior you are, you too can give something back. You too can continue that thread of helping each other. You have something to share. And that's just something I've carried with me these many years, and continue to try to, enact in my professional and personal life.
I love that you said the professor's name too, because in that way we get to honor him
Mm-hmm.
for doing that for you. Anything else that you wish younger women, that you think would be good for younger women to know that we might not have touched on?
I think one of the other things that I would share is that you should be comfortable in your own transparency, but also understand that when you're not accepted or you feel resistance, that you don't question yourself. Understand the motivation, the motivators that may be creating behaviors in others. And so that it's not you. It could be, it has nothing to do with you. You could be prompting a reaction from someone based on their own shortcomings. And so, again, being grounded in who you are, and that is something, and to be both humble, but always be curious.
Mm.
Let your curiosity lead you to the next thing. Let your curiosity help you to improve where you are. Help your curiosity should be leading you to other things and ways to both improve and move. And so I would just say, celebrate that curiosity as you keep going.
So when you're talking about, other people's reactions to you, and I'm thinking, for women, that's carrying one that can cause people to react one way, and then being women of color, there's layers added on to that.
Mm-hmm.
And being curious is hard to bring that forth in those moments sometimes when
Mm-hmm.
you feel like you're not being seen, that
Yes.
somebody's coming at you with things that don't have to do with you personally, but you're there, the one who's there, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. One of the things that as a woman of color, I carry the knowledge with me, and it may be my own absorption of understanding bias that I have to, or I felt like I've had to balance my own method of communication, which is both direct and but empathetic, and not be seen as the angry Black woman. And there are stereotypes, and you may see that in a room. You may understand that it's there, and then you have to understand, just going back to the art of war, how are you going to deal with that? How much energy are you going to use, and what's the most direct way to deal with it? Because I like to suss things out and get them on the table, because that's better for you. And you have to take the risk to do that. But I find that those are, I have my antenna ready, because the world is a very complex place. But I'm not fearful of that. I just understand that people are different, and we all have unconscious biases.
Right. That requires quite a bit of individual growth and development to get to that place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
self-awareness.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Self-awareness and grit and strength.
Grit.
Yeah.
I love grit. I don't hear grit very often, but I love that word. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We also, the last time we talked to you, we were talking about mentors and sponsors. And the question we were talking about was, what did you learn from them?
So when I think of my time at Spelman, and with Dr. Cole, who I remember her saying, I think you're not ready to be the vice president, but I'm creating an associate vice president's role, and I'd like you to take this on. I watched her move through a complex environment, but she did it in a way where her eye was always on the prize. And here's someone who was pulled in many different ways, and we were raising money for the sciences at Spelman, but there were certainly other needs. Everyone had an opinion, but she managed to finesse and keep everyone on that road, if you will, while keeping blinders on to understand this is what we need to do. This is our goal. And so it was a wonderful visual for me to as I've moved through the years, and how she, for me, it helped me to understand what are the things that you can control. What do you control? And that can help you to create your own roadmap of where you need to go. And so I consider her to be a wonderful mentor. And then my previous position at Volunteers of America, I worked with a phenomenal woman, Jatrice Martel Gator, who was the executive vice president. And she's a larger than life personality, an extrovert, very skilled. And I function like an extrovert, but I'm an introvert. I can be very cerebral, and she understood my priorities with my son and family. But at some point she started pushing me out. And that, for me, it meant, I would say, well, there's this opportunity for Leadership Arlington or Leadership Greater Washington. And she said, you need to do those things. These were my own personal development goals. And she said, because you have the job, you have your family, you've been focused, but your son is older. And she made me understand that you just can't be comfortable. And so she really, and networking, celebrating that networking, coming back and saying, I saw an opportunity to be on the Morgan Stanley gift for their Global Impact Funding Trust Board. And I said, I'm going to ask them. And so that really she sparked that. And so you may think that, you're of a certain age and you're doing certain things and you're coasting along, but you know what? There's always something else, that question mark on the road that I described. And that she was a wonderful mentor for me, and remains so.
I want to pull out, because I love it, you can't be comfortable. You can't be comfortable. So what does that mean to you?
It means you have to stay connected. For me, it means that you're always connecting. You're always discovering something. You're challenging yourself. And I understand that for some people, they like doing the same thing over and over again, being in the same environment. But for me, I found what fuels me and sparks my own creativity is not being comfortable or working towards that comfort. And so it's the work of getting from A to B. It's the work of trying to help an organization or a team evolve. That's what it's about. It's not just about the dollars. It's about how are you moving systems, organizations, people, so that you can get to another place. And that connectivity, that energy, that's something that I really enjoy. I enjoy, taking voice lessons from a younger woman. I just enjoy having that kind of, those challenges, mini challenges, and they don't always have to be huge. They're little, and the small ones are. Even this morning, I woke up and I worked out with a trainer, and she must be. She just turned 30. And she said, well, I hear 30 could be my best year. And I said, oh my goodness, there's so many years. But, even being challenged by her is something that that's part of the joy of moving in this world.
Yeah, I like how also being uncomfortable goes with being okay to fail.
Mm-hmm.
It goes with having courage, even small things, which I appreciate your bringing that in. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
have to be things that make you want to, think you're going to lose your lunch because you're so scared.
Right,
Just,
exactly. Exactly.
and I think the more we take those risks, that we put ourselves in being uncomfortable, the bigger we get.
Yes.
The more we think we can do. It's self-empowering, which, it's better to empower your own self
Yes,
personally, I think.
exactly. Because
Yeah,
then it's true.
then
Then
it's
it's
true.
yours. You own it. And it's authentic because it's yours.
And that goes back to what we're talking about failure. The quote that you read earlier, the letter from your staff person, which I don't know if I can find. With no chance to fail, it is hard to feel successful or success,
Yes.
which is for yourself too. Which I
Yes.
was thinking about it. That's what a gift you give to others, and now I'm coming to, and this is a gift you give yourself also.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Because yeah, no, and that's the spark.
that's a spark. I'm getting goosebumps. That's a good
Good.
sign.
Oh, that's great.
Goosebumps is a positive thing.
Yes, that's great.
Anything that we haven't touched on that you would want to share?
Um, I think the other thing that I mentioned, um, being authentic and I also think you have to live, be grateful.
Mm,
And so if you're living and walking a path of gratitude, you are grateful for opportunities and you're grateful for those small steps because those things are to be celebrated and the big wins, the small wins, and but you can let that sense of gratitude that should infuse you and you share that with others. And so being grateful for where you are, how you're owning where you are, and that's something in sharing with younger colleagues that you can power, you can power your own ship. And so
mm.
where do you want to be? And so that gratitude is something that I would put with kindness and strength and because that acknowledges and celebrates where you are. It doesn't mean that you're going to only rest on your laurels, but you need to be grateful for where you are so that you can understand where you can go.
and and appreciate where you are because it's a gift. Even if you worked hard
Mhm.
for it, it's still a gift. And
Mhm.
if we're not grateful, it feels like we would miss the moment. You keep
Absolutely.
going to the next thing, and we're missing the moment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You have to be grateful because, and if you are, that means that you really are, you're reflecting on where you are, you're absorbing the moment, you're in the moment, and however long that moment is. And these are things anyone can do. I mean, you don't have to be able to hop on a plane and go to Paris. You can own your space of gratitude and use that to help you create your own roadmap for success.
Do you have any practices that you use that help you remember to be grateful?
I don't meditate, but I do spend quiet time, and it sounds a little maudlin, but I am um, I can be moved by so many small things. And so that is, those are the things I recognize and celebrate. And whether it's great music, we had a music director who was at our church who left, moving back to Arizona, and we shared a song and said goodbye, and the harmonies were so wonderful. And in that moment, that was a gift. And so I don't know. I am appreciative of things that touch you, and you're open enough where you can absorb those good things that are around you. And I think it gives you some reservoir to weather any difficult times. And we're in a very chaotic environment, and where you can feel fatigue. How much can you do? There's so many needs in the world. How can you help? But these little things are things that I think can help to both propel you and envelop you and let you know that there's still good things happening.
It sounds like it's part of your habit. So you have it integrated into how you see the world. And then also listening to you, I understand that it gives resilience. It helps you be resilient
Yes.
to what's the other things that are going on. And
Uh-huh.
I imagine in your position as development and fundraising, that would be such a weight. Oh, there's so much need, and like it's up to you to come up with the funds, and you and your staff.
Yeah.
To support that, yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's no ego. If you're a fundraiser, you have no ego because you have to. Sometimes people say yes, sometimes they say no. And so you walk a path of humility, but you're also creative. And the other thing that you do is you're building on relationships. You're always building relationships. And so that can be a gift. So you're humbled by those opportunities to connect with people. We recently had an event where we brought supporters and donors together. And one of the images that stood out in my mind, there was a young woman who may have been 30-ish, talking to a more seasoned woman who may have been 80. But they were there because they believed in the organization. And the picture of the two of them chatting and sharing that value that brought them together, coming from different paths, is something that is very inspiring. So those are the things you remember, even with the backdrop of no's and feeling pressure to meet your goals. And so those are things that it kind of smooth the rough edges of a day or a month, or the moments that you encounter.
I like that. Thank you for that. So we're getting to the end of our time. Any final thoughts?
I've enjoyed the conversation, and this has given me an opportunity to reflect, and that in itself is a gift too. And so thank you.
Well, thank you, Shelley. Thank you for taking the time and for being so generous with your thoughts and your experience. And I am very much looking forward to getting your voice out there in the way that I can help get it out there. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.